Markets Live. I hope everyone is having a great start to your Friday. You've got your main man, Hondo here, Howard Greenberg. I am solo today as my partner in crime, Big Beat, is traveling a little bit today. With that being said, want to get right into it. Markets getting hit pretty hard overnight. QQQ is right now set to open down about another 8 tenths of a point after being down almost a half a point yesterday. You can see here we've even made the drop down. Looks like we're headed back to the 50-day MA here. If we see any weakness today around 506.71. So I am looking at that 50-day MA here on QQQ as a key spot to keep an eye on here. When it comes to SPY down even further, and as we can see, that has blasted down through the 50-day MA already, and has sort of same spot where it bottomed out yesterday. So we're right at that 580 level. We'll see here. It looks like we could see more downward movement today. Again, most of the news pretty negative overall. The Fed favored inflation gauge has, which is showing slower price increases in November. I don't know if I believe that though. The PCE here. So we do know that that is one of, if not the Fed's main, or favored barometer of U.S. inflation. It seems to be breaking what appears to a gradual drift higher in prices that forced the central bank to scale back its plan to cut interest rates. The PCE increased by only 0.1% last month, the government said on Friday, which is about half as much. It was expected to be 0.2%. The increase in inflation in the past 12 months inched up 2.4% from 2.3%, pushing it a little bit further away, as we know, from the Fed's target of 2% increase. And the increase in the core was unchanged at 2.8. This comes out just a couple of days after the Fed's FOMC meeting that we had, where they lowered the interest rate 25 basis points. So we do see that. And we know that Fed officials were already aware of the inflation reports and that we could expect to see it. And again, we are seeing, since that news came out at 8:30, we have been in a fairly steady decline across SPY. QQQ has traded more flat. Bitcoin really got hit hard overnight, dropped way down. So we've seen that correction we were looking for here. I did mark it, bounced right at that 50-day MA there at about 91,763 earlier. It got down got down to 92,111 before bouncing back up. And it has recovered pretty nicely here. I did point out in the Slack channel that I'm in with Quasar that there wasn't much resistance to really start getting back up to where we're almost at now in that 96 to 97 range. There just wasn't any real resistance that we saw because we haven't done much in that range. So you really have, we could easily see a nice bounce back up to 96 if we get everything going. We'll point out was looking at liquidations and all that fun stuff in the perpetual futures markets, and trying to see where we are there. And what we see is about $1.4 billion in liquidations in the last 24 hours. So again, 1.42 billion liquidations. What I am seeing right now is that the liquidations are moving over to shorts getting liquidated as people are continuing to sort of pile onto the downside. Let's take a look at Bitcoin, though, more specifically. That is not the case still with Bitcoin, which is mostly long liquidation still being hit here. So people trying to catch, that falling knife. We talk about not trying to do that. We did buy that first dip, not yesterday, but the day before, I'll be waiting here to see what happens before I get back in on another one there. We'll point out when we do look at. Where is what I'm looking for here? There we go. When we look at Bitcoin here, we do see, well, so now they are starting to come back up. When I was looking at this earlier today, there was not much long liquidations that were still being found. So we are seeing people waking up this morning and trying to catch a falling knife here on Bitcoin. So that does put me a little bit more negative than I was just an hour ago, because there was almost no leverage built up to the downside. And what I mean there is there was not much more in the way of long liquidations that can hit. It does look like people are trying to speculate on a move up here this morning and trying to catch that knife, and we know that that tends to be a problem. So I am still now back more aware or more on edge. Hey, Zora, yeah, I am by myself today. Um, so I am a little bit more concerned that we could still see some more downside when it comes to Bitcoin here this morning. It had bounced right back up nicely from that drop to 92 here. So we'll see what happens. Definitely that 930 is going to do it. And like I said, there's not a lot of resistance to 97. So you could see a very quick and rapid. Nice, great, Zora. Yep, that's good. I think you're going to be happy with that spot. I think we're going to approach 97 pretty quickly here again. So we'll see what happens here as that, as we approach that area at 97. Do we have the strength to get through it? But good, healthy pullback. We like to see it. What I also was nervous about that we didn't get, I'd rather pull that band-aid off in one felt swoop. If you kind of look up here on the top left-hand side, what I was worried about is that we were going to get sort of a head and shoulder setup here, where if we had bounced back this morning tremendously, we kind of would have done it, which would have given us much more downside as a problem, or bring a lot more downside in play. But it does look like we have sort of pulled that out. So I'm actually happy to see that retracement. Um, so hopefully we can just get a healthy recovery here. I do think you're going to see a lot of capitulation. I am a little nervous to see what happens here if we get, oh yeah, we hit 92. Yeah. About 4 a.m. we saw another, just an absolute cascade here happen. Um, about, yeah, 4 a.m. here straight down. Uh, and it was all liquidations. Again, we saw $1.5 billion in liquidations across the perpetual futures. And as I did mention though too, it also, the thing that's you still got to be wary of, and what could cause this to be explosive to either side right now, is it only moved open interest down about 13%. So even though we saw 1.5 billion in liquidations, the amount of open interest in the futures of perpetuals only moved down 14%. And quite honestly, a good 10% of that is actual price action that moves it down, instead of um, an actual retracement of people taking bets off. And what I mean there is that price is figured out on the prices of the cryptos at that time, and we see a lot of alts are down 6, 7, 8%. Bitcoin being down, almost 3% here. So you got to take those numbers in along with that. So definitely still have leverage built up. Could be an explosive day. A lot of expiration, especially, IBIT today. So we'll see what happens. I think we're going to see some explosions as we get to the open here this morning on these. And we'll see what we get as that open comes up. They are live trading pretty much. So or not pretty much. They are live trading. So we're looking right now at about 53.94 on IBIT. It closed yesterday at 54.72. So down about another 1.43%, or about a 5%, 6% loss over the 2 days. So, and as I was looking at stocks in general, was not a lot of positives in pre-market. I saw, Boeing is up slightly. Brown-Forman, actually, the liquor and wine company, I was surprised, up about 3% this morning. Um, and not really any reason. They had earnings like 2 weeks ago, so it wasn't like they had much going on that would move that to the upside. FedEx, nice beat here. I was thinking about shorting FedEx here, although you can see it had made a run to 313 out on its earnings call, good earnings, and then retraced now back to that 300. So that play might have that trade might have played its way out, unfortunately, on me overnight. And again, otherwise, not a heck that I'm seeing that's up. They're random. Some of the Chinese names, Neo up about 1.82%. But in general, across the market, they're down. DXY, which is the Dixie or the U.S. currency versus a basket of others, back above 108 here. So that is historically high. It set a record in the last 24 hours, getting to 108.54. I do have Stephen Flanagan, our FX expert, coming on here. And hi, good morning, Ron. Hope all is well. Coming in here a little early today at 9:45. Him and I will look at what's going on in the world of money, forex, and what he sees there. But the hits keep coming. I think with quad witching day going on here today, we're gonna have even more volatility across the market for sure. My volume is low, Ron. Zora, are you seeing my volume is low also? I can definitely move it up. I think I'm just subdued because the market's a little subdued, maybe. But let me know, Ron, if that's working any better there. And I will speak a little bit louder. I'm also turned because it's just me. I'm noticing I'm turning more to my chart. So that's probably the other reason there. Let me move this microphone further over to this side. But DXY taking off. I'm also, what you're seeing here too that is interesting is while DXY is taking off, the euro has bounced back up. So 103, the sterling's bounced back up to 125. Mexican US up 0.74. So we're seeing a surge across a bunch, Japan being the opposite. Japan being where we're seeing currencies move much further down. Or not much further, but a half a point. So we'll have to ask again Stephen Flanagan, where else is this currency change coming that I don't have up on my charts that's causing that? We'll mention too, tick now actually not too bad, positive. Now we're back to negative. So the tick's been going back and forth between positive and negative. I will point out advanced decline at negative 1430 here has stayed really negative. VIX back up at 2365 has come down a little bit off of the highs. It had been up around 27 earlier last night. But again, as we talked about, hopefully if you were, this morning, as you know, Zora, when the markets are down, only the smart traders pay attention, right? When the markets are down, the traders that are the perma bulls, they're too upset with their trades to kind of see what's going on. So they just tend to tune out, unfortunately, which is the mistake. This is the times that you want to see what's coming next, what you should be looking at. We're going to look today. We're going to spend most of our time looking at this. This is all of the S&P 500 or NASDAQ 100, all of them that are within 3% of dropping down to their 200-day MA. So these are and there's a lot of big names and interesting names on here that we're going to take a look at. Microsoft, I got to be honest, I love any Mag 7 that's coming down towards its 200-day MA. It's going to bounce back up. And if you look at these, while they might come below the 200-day MA, they don't spend a lot of time below that 200-day MA. You go back in time, it just doesn't. So definitely interested myself on Microsoft at any pullback here towards that level. I have set up my screener with some kind of cool information that I look at for it. So I'm looking at, what is the price currently? What would that 200-day SMA come in at? looking at volume there, these are all going to have volume because, as I said, I only selected stocks that are within the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ 100 for this first round. When I include the entire NASDAQ, this thing shot up to 170. I just felt that was a little too big to kind of get through in there. Um, Yeah, they are. I agree. The others are lightweights. They don't want to, but this is the time to look at this. I mean, look at these names: Microsoft, Procter and Gamble, Abbott, Intuit, Caterpillar is one that I'm interested in. Chubb Limited, Starbucks. These are the times that you take a look at these and you say, who's approaching that 200? Are they respecting that 200? And is this a period to buy? Caterpillar being one that I was really looking at here today. And again, you just look at the history of Caterpillar. It doesn't spend much time below its 200-day MA, right? Um, and when and that this is going all, I'm looking back now into, 2013 here when I look at that. Let me delete this. So, Caterpillar is definitely one I'm watching here. It is so far respecting that 200-day MA really well. So one that if I'm looking at a swing trade, I like Caterpillar a lot. Again, what I put on here with some of the other things I was looking at is what is their market cap, and then what is their actual enterprise value. If someone was going to buy the company, what would they be looking at as a bio company, so I can figure out, is this something that's totally overblown and we don't want to be in it because there's too much extrinsic value in there, not enough intrinsic value. I also put up here if they have a dividend per share, what it is. I put up what their price to earnings are because, again, I'm going to avoid Intuit. It's at 61, almost 62% price, earnings ratio. I do know that those software companies do run at that. And if we look at Snowflake and some of the others, they can be all the way up into that 90 to 100 range on those. But I'm not looking for that. What I'm looking for is maybe, like I said, Caterpillar. That's at 16.71 price to earnings. That it's, value on expected value is 206 billion. It's only trading at 173.99 right now. The negative that I do see on it, I'm also taking into account analyst ratings. It's neutral where a lot of these others are buys. But again, so, just picking a couple that I like right off the top of my head is Microsoft, Caterpillar. I'm not as positive on Starbucks personally. Cisco is another one. As you guys know, I come from the world of restaurant. Cisco, by far, the biggest name when it comes to food service for not just restaurants, because again, if you're worried about restaurants maybe having a downturn, what will take an upturn, then you'd probably be looking at, right, cafeterias. We also know Cisco is huge in the world of managed care. So if you have a family member that maybe is in um, a managed healthcare system or in hospitals, a lot of that food service is done by Cisco. So it's pretty resilient to changes in dining mentality because they sell everything from the inexpensive food that, a bodega in New York City maybe be looking for, along with the finest. They're not the place where maybe the high end is looking, but your Cheesecake Factory, some of these other ones that have had strong moves that we've talked about with Big Beat, Darden, who we talked about yesterday, they're all big buyers from Cisco. So again, another one that if it maybe hits this 200-day MA that I might like here as a buy on Cisco. Some other companies that were interesting, and they've got them from all sectors. You have DTE Energy in here. You've got a couple of the big financial services. If you like S&P, not as in a bet on the S&P 500, but the parent company that does it, S&P Global is in here. I also saw that Invesco is in here. More Molson Coors, if you want to be in that, if you think the beverage industry. SIBO, Global Markets, again, the folks that run the Chicago Board of Trade and everything there. McCormick and Company on the spice side is a pretty good company to keep an eye on. So a lot of companies here that I think are interesting to take a look at. That's what you should be doing on days like today, where maybe it's a down market. Maybe you don't want to be, playing in this volatility as we're hitting, quad witching. And we're going to about to enter low liquidity times that we normally see as we get to there. But, these are the things to keep an eye on. So these are the things we'll watch a little bit more closely today, and talk about. If you guys, Ron, Zora, if you guys find anything that you want to add in, any of the companies you want me to take a look at, let me know. But those are some of the ones that I'm definitely looking at here for more of a long-term review here. Didn't talk to Steve, but we now have to sort of look at it and say, we were looking for that 10% retracement, right? We haven't quite hit that yet. The highs on QQQ were about 540, and we're trading about 510 right now, so we've lost 30. So, we're getting close. We're in that 7% range, right? Probably right now, of a drop from its all-time highs. I think if we look at the weekly, it should give me a pretty good idea here. Nah, everything's still just showing up. But, so does it start to do that? The Dow is one that's even taken a bigger fall, from 45 to 42. So about 3. So again, we're getting close to that 10% drawdown that most people in the market. That one actually is right out of TradingView. That one I'm using the scanner right out of TradingView. So if even the free version you can use to do this, just so you know, you need the paid version of TradingView to use their scanner. And they've got a pretty good one here. And all I did was select, as you can see, they have a bunch of stuff set in. And then what I selected was looking for the SMA 200 to be within 0 to 3% of it. So, and then I just chose the two indexes I wanted, like I said, because I also had the full NASDAQ in. And when I did that, it had 170. And I said to myself, Howard, if I'm really looking right now and this is the drawdown, and I think that we are getting to the bottom of that drawdown, let's look at the big boys, the big players in the game, and that's where I want to probably be, looking for my alpha right now. What I plan to do next is to start to look through industry and maybe throw in also in here, from the NASDAQ. Yeah, absolutely. The TOS has the same one, and it is easy to use. I definitely suggested Zora for just certain things. You've been a Prosper student for years, so you know how successful, especially Scott Bauer, is on playing that 200-day MA, right? So it's one that I definitely believe in. I don't think there's any doubt in. And you see, like I said, when you look at a Caterpillar, that's a pretty compelling chart to watch, to see how a stock reacts at the 200. So we hit it here, and I started to do some calculations on what its average move up is from the 200. And Caterpillar has a pretty impressive one. Whoops, I didn't want to draw that line. This area right here, it has dropped below it. I don't want to say that there's not risk of more downside, but I like my risk return here on a Caterpillar off of this type of area. Yeah, I mean that's just what I'm looking at, is saying, man, it has responded, going back for years basically, except for COVID. When it came out of COVID, and we know what the problem was there, is it shot up tremendously in 2020 and 2021 leading into COVID, as all those farm money came out, all those subsidies came out, and people bought their tractors. But now is the time that it looks like it's getting to a real nice spot for me. Does it still have downside to 340 possibility? Yeah, it does. Absolutely. But again, I'm not trying to catch that knife and pick the bottom. What I want to do is I'd be looking at this as a longer term position. If it holds the 200, maybe getting in it. And if it loses, looking at it, getting back into it down here at that 336. But I want to have that stuff figured out. Microsoft, same type of setup. Again, it's gone. It's ranged under the 200 a few times for sure, but it doesn't do it. What it does is when it bounces back through it in those cases, look at that explosive move through. And the case of here in February, it moved from 252 to 364 when it broke through it. There aren't many times that it does a false breakout from it. That's pretty much the only false breakout that you find is, whatever happened on March of 2022. And again, COVID skews stuff a little bit more there that you have on others. So we'll keep an eye on that. Ron, I see you talking about CCJ. I don't know that ticker offhand, CCJ. And I would be more about playing fades today. You could convince me more to try to play a fade off of the earnings. Same thing with FedEx. I talked about a little bit earlier that had moved up about 8-9% here on its earnings. I think if negativity fades in here today, I'd be watching that. Because the other thing I'm noticing, I was looking today. This was one of those days that I couldn't sleep, so I've been up since like 3:30, 4 o'clock. And if you look at the advanced decline line, so this is advanced decline for all U.S. stocks. So this is, NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange combined. And what I noticed is we haven't seen a day that it hasn't faded out in the afternoon. And man, I can't tell you, the last time. You got to come all the way back here to November 24th to see us, moving upward sort of at the end of the day, right? So, that's my thing. And then you can see it really here, back when we got that, right after the election, you can see all those days where we pushed up, pushed up, pushed up. But you literally go back to almost, December 2nd, and what you really see is a pattern of, man, once you get that initial rush. I mean, yesterday at 9 o'clock we maxed out, day before we maxed out, closer to 2 in the afternoon. We traded sideways all day and then we dumped. The same thing on Monday, Monday and Tuesday, we really dumped both days right at the open. So, so it's just where you got to watch, for these are the trends that you look for to see if we're going to see a reversal. And what we have seen, I think everybody can agree, right? What we've seen is some explosive moves after hours that sometimes have been absolutely could be tax loss selling. And you're going to see that, Ron. And that's what's going to happen. So that's the capitulation that we're going to see now, right? People, you've seen it on our Slack channel, right? Is people like Aaron and some of these other folks that are already like, now they're capitulating. There's no comeback. They're, in my opinion, they're being wrong. Play the hand in front of you. Don't get too negative, and don't be exit liquidity for others. And what I'm worried about and what I'm trying to point out today is, don't be that person who today decides to tax harvest and then we get a run up for the next week. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong, is if it's in your best interest to, do some tax loss harvesting, then do that. But what you tend to see is this is where where we talk about smart money takes advantage of us, right? And you'll get a lot of those folks that have sort of weaker hands that will capitulate today for sure, going into the weekend and all that. And the government shut down exactly, Zora, which I saw already. And, I take it for a grain of salt, but I saw they were running back into chambers a little bit earlier here. So that could work its way out already today. Don't be surprised if that works out today. That would be what gives us that jump. And that's what I mean is exactly, what happens? Everybody gets nervous. Everybody capitulates here at 9:30 in 1 minute. And then the next thing you know is at 2 o'clock this afternoon, they announce that the government isn't shutting down. And remember, a government shutdown, it happens all the time for a day or two. It isn't the biggest deal in the world. What's going to happen is that all of these congressmen and senators, they want to go home. They can't go home until they get this fixed. If someone gets caught going home, they'll never get reelected next election. So, and people have made that clear. Trump has already come out and others and have said, from both sides, if you go home, we're going to let everybody know you went home. So you're going to see they want their vacations just like everybody else. And you're going to see both sides hopefully work together and get us where we need to be there. I don't like talking politics, but the government shutdowns are a big part of why we got that drop yesterday. So you do have to bring it up. But yeah, so that's what that's what I'm looking at is that's the capitulation. I saw it on the crypto side this morning where Bitcoin people woke up and sold off their Bitcoin. Up, we're going to 70,000. Here we go. I better get out. And already it bounced back. And again, as you know, they were on. I said it right away. Right, look for us. There's upside back to 97. There wasn't a lot of resistance, and we bounced back from that 91 right to that 90, close to that level already. So, and that's the other part is, as Steve's always pointed out for us, right? Some of the biggest rips to the upside you see are in a bear market like today, where all of a sudden the good news comes in and boom, you get a takeoff. So, be playing the market in front of you. Don't be exit liquidity for them. I'm not jumping in first thing here this morning, but I am going to watch it because I do think, again, there is enough, reasons for there to be positivity if they can jump out of that government shutdown that you see today, like you pointed out, Zora. Or if we get there's not much earnings reports today, so you're not going to really see earnings. And I do think today, quad witching, it's a tough day. It's going to just be volatility. You want to be playing volatility here more than you want to be day trading in general. I would be. Yeah, I wouldn't. Today's gonna be a day that I sort of watch and see what happens more than anything else. Sorry, I just hit the wrong thing here. I don't want to take that off my screen. Okay, we are open here. Sorry about that. Didn't see that. Tick is positive here, so there we go. Let's take a quick look. QQQ though, I'm not seeing with the positivity because the first few minutes here drop on QQQ. Advanced decline negative 1892. We got our first halt already. Let's see what we got here. IZTC. IZTC. Let's see what that is. Let's look at the first halt of the day. I'm not going to try to say the name of the company. Invisine. Looks like halted to the downside, so we're not as concerned, although that thing has been moving. There's some volatility there. What do we got as we open up? Bitcoin back above 95,000 here. In fact, challenging 95.5 here. So like I said, wasn't a lot of resistance there. We are seeing a little bit of gold kind of catch a bid. As I mentioned, I've got Mr. Flanagan coming in a little earlier today here at 9:45. We'll talk to him. DXY shot up over 108. I do want to see what it's doing here this morning. Back above 108. Okay, so we had come back down. Now we're heading back up there, so we'll keep an eye and talk about what's going on there. Tell you what, know what's getting interesting for me, Mealy back down here at 1654. Those that know Mercado Libre, basically the Amazon of Latin America. Steve and I did a very lucrative trade on that when it gapped down here last time. I am interested here, so that's one I'm going to keep an eye on here. Crypto side of stuff, I'll let it play out a little bit more, but I am interested in Mara down at this $20 level for sure. You can see I marked it as sort of the key spot. If it regains that 2015 here is what I'm looking. And again, 200-day MA right below it. So one I'm taking a look at here on the Bitcoin mining side is definitely Mara, MARA. Wow, I just saw Steve just posted that there's $6.5 trillion worth of options that are options, individual stocks, indexes, and ETFs set to expire today. 6.5 trillion. So that is why I'm saying you got to be careful. Seeing our second halt here today, HSDT. See what we've got there. That one is halted to the upside here, so that's interesting. Halt to the upside just above VWAP. This is one that could be an interesting play here. Whoops, that's the daily chart. Let me get down to this 3-minute chart here. This one could be an interesting one to play. Sorry, give me 1 second to get my screen set up for when Mr. Flanagan comes in a few minutes here. I do want to be ready for him. There we go. We're ready for him. Okay. 125 HSDT. I could be conned into trying to play here on this. You've got definite room right back to that 180 level. I'd be looking at first profit at 160 here. So again, it's trading at 125. I'm going to look to get in this here at this 125 off of this halt. And I'm going to see, I want to put my first stop in 155. I'm going to look for on the top side 155, 175. And I'm going to put my stop in at $1. Actually, at 98 cents. So I'm going to go in this right here, or at least try to. Again, I'm going in at $1.25 my bid, 155 first take profit, 175 second profit. Have a great day, Ron, and a great weekend. Sorry I didn't see that. And $1 at the stop profit at the take profit. So I'm going to leave that up. I'm going to add that to my watch list here so that I can go on and off it. Give me 1 second here. Let's put it on my today. Okay, so we will keep an eye on that here. 9:36. It went off at 9:35, so we've got about 4 more minutes. Let's take a look at what else is going on here in the markets. Seeing the biggest mover so far to the upside today, MYSZ. MYSZ. Biggest mover to the upside so far. My size. Not even familiar with that. Internet software company. This one looks like it's halted right now also. That's an interesting one too because it's got more upside. I'm going to stick with the $1.25 one right now. A couple others getting halted here too. NTZ just got halted. NTZ. This one though has been paused in an exchange listed issue. So that one's a little bit different there than the normal that we see. Let's keep an eye here. Tick is positive about 500 here. So we are seeing a move to the upside. QQQ, which was down almost 9/10 of a point, now down about 6/7. So it's moved up here from the lows of about 505 to up to about 510. SPY, same sort of thing. Yeah, SPY was actually down further. It's made a nicer move up, continuing to push to the upside here. So far, good news. Bitcoin. So far, we are catching a bid. What I will point out again, as I was looking at that hourly chart on advanced decline, we have seen a bunch of these moves to the upside get sold off pretty quickly in the afternoon yesterday, right in the 9 o'clock hour. We saw it go down, tremendously and continue to fall all day. So I am not sold yet on the recovery. Although the day-and-a-half rule would be in effect in general with that Steve has, which is, it takes a day and a half for people to properly digest what happens in the Fed meeting. And then, now the rational mind is in control. So we'll see if that's the case because we are seeing a little bit of a positive move here so far. I will say oil has pulled back a little bit, back down around that 68 level on WTI here. That was again on demand concerns that there just isn't demand for oil and gas that we were expecting so far. So we'll see what happens there. And we have seen a pretty good drop here by both the 10-year and the 30-year overnight. We are now back at 4.5 on the 10-year. We know we were pushing on 4.6 there on that yesterday. And the 30-year, which had moved up as far as, I don't want to give you a false number there, 4.77, now back at 4.7. So we do see that moving back down. So far, it's a mixed bag when we look at sectors. Negative sectors so far, XLK, which is technology fund for the SPY Select, also consumer discretionary negative, and then lastly, service sector slightly down. We do see that right now the market being led by the healthcare, so healthcare taking us there, and let's take a look at what is leading us in healthcare here. Give me 1 second, open up my healthcare. Well, and we do see Cigna again, second day in a row, if I'm not mistaken, where Cigna's Well, yesterday when everything dropped, it dropped too. But Cigna has been moving up a little bit here. We do see HCA also up about 1.34%. So we do see insurance and healthcare moving up. Baxter International up 2.84%. So we do see in general healthcare having a nice start to the day. Let's see what's going on with. I did not get a fill on HSTD, and it is stopped again, stopped at 120, so it went down about a nickel. It is halted. It did make a quick run right up to that 150 line, so I did not get my fill on it, but it did do exactly what I said, went right to that first target. Um, but it has pulled back down here and halted again. Be interesting if it bounces here at this 120 level, you would look for this to the upside still. So still in play here, but it is halted again. HSDT. These things are halting left and right though. Let's see what we've got here. Tick staying positive, and we continue to see QQQ climb. Bitcoin almost back at 96 here, so at 95,900. Like I said, there was not a lot of resistance till we got back to 97 here. Once we get to 97, we start to see the resistance from the first week of November, last week of November, first week of December start to kick in there. So that's what we'll be watching here. That's our first level of resistance to keep an eye on here. I do want to see what's going on. ETFs are moving up a little bit here after being down too. So after the ETFs, pre-market hours moving up pretty nicely also. So they are moving pretty much in tandem. So that is good to see. We are close to getting ready here for Mr. Flanagan. It looks like he tried to come in. Not sure if he got booted out here. Let me get my screen ready for him. Okay, I am ready for him when he gets in here. What else do we have going on here this morning so far? Bitcoin 95.6, so unable to get back above 96 there. Tick is slowing down a little bit, 165. Advanced decline, though, nicely up about almost 1,400 here on the advanced decline. And QQQ now only down half a point, so we are seeing tech start to push back here. I do see Mr. Flanagan has come in. Let me throw my headphones on quickly, and we'll get him right in here for us. Okay, let me switch over here. There he is. Good morning, Mr. Flanagan. Thanks for coming in a little early to join us today. How are you doing on this fine Friday?
Yeah, doing great on a Friday, Howard. You know, I don't seem to get a grip here of the central banks when core PCE, their favorite number, is up point 0.1, lower than expected point 0.3. Inflation is a little bit lower than expect. What are we looking at? Yesterday, the needle went all the way to inflation, and damn growth, and the
Yeah.
markets reacted accordingly. Now we're left picking up the pieces from, I don't know. I
Yeah,
really question.
yeah, you got to question what's going on here across, all of these, central bankers and everything. Everything's fine, everything is great everywhere in the world. Where you see one after the other. I've got to ask you a quick question. With DXY shooting up at the same time that the euro and the sterling is, where are we? What am I not looking at that's moving in the opposite direction?
Well, I think when you broke the 108.08 highs, I think you saw a lot of stop loss buying kick into the marketplace. So
Okay, that makes a little
I
sense.
I attribute a lot of the spike up to 108.54 as a lot of perhaps liquidity imbalance.
Okay. Um, yeah, and the markets, this is the pullback that we've all sort of been waiting for. Do you think this is that, today, I don't know if you saw the number, it's like $6.5 trillion in expirations today. I mean, it's just
Yeah,
absolutely insane.
today's one of those days where, while the expiries could be extremely large, they could be equally offsetting one another.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think
And
we could just see some topsy turvy day without a big move one way or the other. Do you think yesterday was the big move, the big drop down we were seeing? Was that the hammer, or was that just the first crack in the bottom of the plate?
I think that a lot of it is the first crack. I think that it goes to show the lack of understanding of the marketplaces today by our central bankers. I think that they would not have guessed that the markets would have been routed the way they were. But that's computerized trading. Once they start selling, unless something stops them, they're just going to keep adding and adding. And it's a snowball effect. You look at the UK that punted again and did not cut interest rates. And now they're talking about it was a dovish no decision. Now, what
What
is
is
that? A
what
dovish,
does that
you
mean?
know,
That was my question for you. You're supposed to explain that to me because that is sounds like the biggest oxymoron that I've ever heard.
Yeah, well, three of the six, there was a 6-3 split. Three of them did want to cut. But now we've got GDP on Monday in the UK expected to be zero.
Oh,
And this is coming, and retail sales were only zero point 0.2.
right.
But this all comes in, you've got to open up the scope and look at the world when you begin to look at currencies and what the effect in money moves first to our marketplace. New Zealand, okay, it's one of our industrialized countries. Their GDP came out at minus 1%,
Ooh,
with the second quarter revised minus 1.5%, 1.1%. So you've got 2 quarters less in wicked negative growth.
yeah.
They've cut interest rates 1.25% already. The next meeting isn't until February. So hang on, people. We're not going to
Yeah.
cut. We're not going to cut for a month. And now all of our central banks don't meet until the end of January, early February. I just don't get it that there's enough telltale signals out there that growth is ebbing and cratering for the world central bankers not to get out in front of this. And
Yeah, you would
Howard,
think, and you can
Howard,
see it. Yep.
one last thing. Who came up with 2% as an inflation rate? Where did that
Alan
number get
Greenspan, if
manufactured?
I had to guess, Alan Greenspan, isn't he supposedly responsible for everything, good or bad?
But I mean, you're
Yeah.
in 2.5, 2.6, 2.7, close enough. Let's go, guys.
Well, that's what yeah, that's one thing I would ask you is aren't those rounding numbers at some point? Is don't get me wrong, 2.9 and stuff, you start getting a little nervous because it's, now you're almost 50% above where you want to be. And we also know that they've selectively determined what goes into those baskets at a rate that, you need a Nobel Prize to tell anybody what it actually is, what they're counting and what they're not counting. Um, what I'm seeing though is the same setup I talked about. I don't know if you were listening earlier. Advanced decline. We're seeing it right now. Any green is being sold off immediately right now. The Nasdaq was down almost a point. It moved up to a half a point, and now it's right back at 9/10 of a percentage point down. We're seeing the same rinse and repeat. What I'm nervous about is I've been trying to tell our viewers, don't get me wrong. If you have a plan and you want to do some tax harvesting, because we had someone ask earlier in the show about tax harvesting, do we think that's part of what's going on? And it's always part of what happens this time of the year. But I'm more concerned that I've seen in some, chat rooms and things that I'm in that people are capitulating as opposed to doing tax harvesting. And they're like, oh no, now I'm down for the year. I'm just selling, blah, blah, blah. That's what the institutions are hoping for. They'll gladly let you be that exit liquidity right now. So, I'm not telling people what to do, but I am just telling them, how this plays out a lot. And, I saw it this morning on the Bitcoin, that 24-hour market that you can watch. I woke up at 4 a.m. and you could see it. The capitulation hit as soon as the European market hit midday, and it went straight to heck, so to speak, as the U.S. market opened, and it bounced right back up. So
Yeah.
and I also pointed out I've been watching today. I was looking at the list of things approaching the 200-day MA. I love playing that bounce back off it, and you've got some pretty big names. Microsoft, Procter and Gamble, Caterpillar, that are all moving into that area there. So just an interesting time to be investing. I just, keeping people, keep your head on that swivel, and, start to develop those wish lists, because this
Yeah.
is the time where you might get some of those wish lists filled.
Yeah, exactly. And, with central banks not meeting for another month, month and a half, this is a period where, you want to keep your powder dry.
Absolutely. And as we know, during a bear market, some of the best rips to the upside happen, right? Is where you see those reversals where something happens like today. If at 2 o'clock the government shutdown's averted, what will we see? We'll see, a big bounce up. Is it sustainable? Probably not. But will it give you that quick bump? Yep. So be watching what happens in the market. Play the hand in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, you're starting to see the Doge already making its releases on X about what's in the budget. And, you know, I think the majority of the people out there are looking at, millions of dollars in waste being spent. So, you know what? Close the government down.
Yeah.
I mean, not a big deal.
Yeah, but that's a tough one living, in the DC area. It affects so many people in so many different ways when you do that. Some people don't get paychecks and things like that, they
But
do
that
count
but
on for the
how it
holidays.
that's not going to happen in a short term, shutdown. In a short-term shutdown, everything goes as is. Some of the peripherals don't get spent, but the government still operates.
Yeah,
So I,
absolutely.
I don't go. I've been through these government shutdowns so many times. It's just fear mongering so that one side gets their wish list versus the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think though that some of the malaise in the market is also that they were hoping that there wouldn't be these fights amongst, themselves, so to speak. The Republicans on their side fighting amongst themselves already. Just says that we're gonna have, we had 4 years of the Democrats fighting themselves, and we're now gonna get in 4 years of the Republicans fighting themselves. So I do
But
worry about that a little bit.
Yeah, but the people that are fighting right now are the has-beens that are, there's a whole turnover that starts, in January. So
Yep.
again, I don't look at that. I'm looking at the more macro view, seeing the world, and the dollar is the play, the Dixie, can
Yeah.
trade up. A break of the highs now, 108.50 is going to yield probably a play up to 114 and a half, 115. And why not?
Wow.
When I started in the business, if you could, take a Dixie, we were in the 160 levels in my early days. So I'm not looking at this as catastrophic. I don't think that the dollar index can have much of a long life if it does trade to 114, 115. It'll be a move that probably goes up as the rest of the world begins to then turn their systems around and get growth back. But you've got 3% growth in the US and you've got growth nowhere in the industrialized world. So something's got to give. I watched Japan. I still love the Japanese yen. Traded up as high as 157.97. And now you're seeing the Bank of Japan and the Ministry of Finance officials starting to warn about the level of dollar yen. You
Right.
don't want to play a short yen position at these levels. So there's a lot going on in the currency world, and plenty of opportunities in the market. This is a market we're entering in year end. Anybody with any experience in the markets know that the weather changes at the drop of a dime here.
Yeah.
So, and as we just saw on Thursday, this is not a market you want to be long term positioning. You're looking for opportunity levels, as you mentioned, and that's what you're doing. Keep your powder dry. You want to
Yeah.
be able to enter the market when that opportunity presents itself.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the takeaway that we've been trying to give here is, make sure you're agile and make sure you're keeping powder on the sidelines because there is going to be movement. The volatility is the one thing we can guarantee, right?
That's right.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Steve. We're going to get out a little early today. I know I have a meeting to get into here with our
Good.
great new educational platform that we're going to be kicking off that you're going to be excited to see over the next few months here at
I'm looking
Quasar
forward to
Markets.
it.
Yeah, so thank you so much. Have a fantastic weekend, Steve. And everybody at Quasar Markets, have a fantastic weekend. Be safe and enjoy the football first college playoffs. I'm excited about it.
Here we
I love
go.
it. I love that stuff. So I'm excited about it.
Have a great weekend.
You too, my friend. Everybody will see you.